politics of fear and hate are wrong. We love you and politics of compassion
But America,
and love are right.
we are not going back.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Raised Red, Living Blue podcast. I'm your host, Jason Will, joined by Mr. Justin Jones. Justin Jones is becoming a recurring guest on the show, and that's because he is very smart.
I don't know about all that.
And you're just closely tied into just, I think, from your past, going to seminary in the Birmingham area, being a pastor, just being somebody who's biblical, I guess is the right way to put it. A Christian who is also disgruntled by what's happening culturally, politically. Am I that correct?
You might overstate the smart thing, but I'm at least, I'm accustomed to it. I've kind of been watching this train wreck for about 20 years. So what I'm witnessing right now is kind of the culmination of what I've seen kind of building and just been very much immersed in for a long, long time.
That's an interesting fact that you bring up well, before we get too deep into it, I've been trying to get with Justin to do a 6-month review of Trump's first 6 months of his 2.0 term here. Basically, I'm calling it the shit show. Where we're at right now, he's calling it 200 days of winning. So I wanted to just kind of unpack that and see what your thoughts were. I feel like most of the stuff that's happening is damaging to the country and is not really helping the everyday American. But I wanted us to both try to dig deep and try to find something positive, because the whole point of this is really trying to create a community of people and welcoming people that, are waking up today going, WTF, what the heck's going on? But back to you and your connection with the church. So, you mentioned this going back 20 years. I think a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of research, a lot of evidence, a lot of hard evidence that this does go back decades.
Absolutely.
And I would go back. How long ago was David Koresh? I mean, there's ties to David Koresh. There's ties to the Atlanta bombing at the Olympics. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can find. The Oklahoma City bombing. There's a lot of high-level officials that serve in the LDS Church that are affiliated with the Trump administration. And before we hit record, we were talking about Project 2025. And there's all of these commonalities. I mean, you can literally, there's breadcrumbs to follow all the way back to, where we're currently at right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I attended a Christian college, Southern Baptist University, Union University in Jackson, Tennessee. And I remember the night of the 2000 election, Bush v. Gore. And it appeared as if Gore was going to take it at one point. And I remember a professor calling a just campus prayer chain around the quad, where we're all lifting up our prayer to our Lord and Savior Jesus, that God would somehow sway the election for Bush. And then those hanging chads, just divine intervention right there to get Bush into the White House. So prayers answered. Another
interesting reference, because I was still a Republican at that point.
Right.
It really kind of started. It was interesting. I felt like Bush was a boob, and I was on the Dixie chick bandwagon there. And then 9/11 happened, and I saw his chin quivering as he was talking to the camera, and I was like, he may be a dumbass, but this is a good dude here. And it turns out he's not so dumb.
No,
he's got a high IQ. He's not a dumb guy.
I remember someone in my church kind of looking at me at one point and going, because I was pretty, towards the end of his administration, pretty critical, and she was going, he will be better remembered than you realize right now. And God, to have George W. Bush, I never would have thought I'd say that, to have George W. Bush in office right now. That would be incredible, but.
I started my haterade, my distancing, my distrust, my dissatisfaction of the Republican Party really started under the Bush administration. Although I was proud to have him as my president during 9/11, it was definitely a flawed presidency. But I can remember my wife going to a conference, and he was one of the guest speakers, and she was like, "This guy is so relatable, so down to earth, so funny. All that turned out to be true. You know, he's a good dude.
I will never ever forget that first pitch, 9/11. You know, when he just went out there and just threw a strike. I mean, you felt. I'm not getting chills thinking about it.
I am too. I just got goosebumps.
Just the remembering what our country. I mean, very flawed. And I mean, again, I'm not one to romanticize our history. Try to have kind of a sober look at it, but those moments where we could come together and at least celebrate what it means to be an American and just how the poison that's been injected into our system over the last 10 years and how far removed we are from that. It just makes me profoundly sad.
So here's the conundrum in my opinion, okay? So I feel like, 6+ months in, 200 days in, whatever. It's not funny, but in a way, cynically hysterical. I don't know what the term is, but I feel like, all the stuff that's happening and then the response of the American public. I can see that there's fractures in the base right over this Epstein crap and all that, but there's a hell of a lot of people out there that are still going, hey, grocery prices are down, gas prices are down, inflation's down, that feel like it's promises made, promises kept, and it's just they're like, yeah, it's been 200 days of winning. So I think the slippery slope here is like, I just want to laugh in somebody's face, and that's not going to bring them to the table, right? So we got to kind of finesse this a little bit and provide a little bit of a nuanced approach. And what I'm talking about here is like, the day one stuff. Obviously, that was unrealistic. We knew that was, but and you hear people on the right or Fox News personalities go, we should give him a break. That was just a campaign bluster. Whatever. That's not realistic. If you bought into that, you were, you need some help. I don't know. So we got to be careful here, but there is a heck of a lot to unpack. But what would be your description, or when I say, hey, how's the first 200 days been?
Shocking and yet predictable at the same time.
Oh, I love it.
I mean, it's you're watching a slow motion car crash take place. That is, I mean, if you had familiarity with Project 2025 beforehand, if you at least kind of studied it like I had, I mean, this is the playbook. And he got up and said it wasn't going to be, this isn't what we were going to do. But I mean, Trump has no real, outside of just greed, aggrandizement and xenophobia and racism, he has no core convictions.
Yeah.
So he's going to align himself with whoever is going to be able to enrich him, glorify him. That he's a useful idiot. So a Project 2025, it's not like he really cares about those things, but those people are the ones who propped him up and supported him and all. So he's like, yeah, fine, whatever. So they just put executive orders, he'll just sign them. And so if you knew, Project 2025, and just, I would say for better or for worse, really for worse. But I mean, I kind of get the conservative mindset. I know what they want. I've lived in that space my whole life.
Yeah.
So none of this is shocking that this is what getting rid of the Department of Education. I mean, that's been something they've been trying to do since Reagan.
Right.
So none of this is surprising, and yet to see it happen in real time and to see these people fold in real time, to see Mike Johnson, dismiss Congress so they don't put the Epstein files up for a vote. He's going to do it, and yet you're surprised when you see it at the same time.
Yeah. I think that's, a very accurate description of what's happening. And it really is, like I said, almost comical to watch. I mean, so Trump said before the election that he had no real knowledge of Project 2025. What did he say? Like, I've never read it. He knew it existed, or he's heard about it.
And I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad. But it makes no difference. I have nothing.
But that was pretty much the extent of it. And then you see a number of these. I mean, it's turning out to be a playbook. They are implementing it. So to me, that's comical. That people don't go, Geez, I mean, but you can start putting those pieces of the puzzle together, and then at the end of the day, when the puzzle's completed, you've got that big turd emoji looking in front of you of what's happening. I mean, all the things he said he was going to do. Here's a much better example, I think. Him suddenly realizing Putin's a bad guy, and he's got to be tough on Putin.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got, because again, I just want everybody to understand, I've had an IQ test. I'm a person of average intelligence. Or I don't just say that because I like self-deprecating humor. It is true. I see that and go, this guy's full of shit. And yet my friends, my even MAGA friends that I'm still holding on to for dear life are like, man, everything's going good. And the end justifies the means, or it's the common good, the greater good. You take that all the way to maybe some TikTok influencers. I got back on TikTok. I got off TikTok for a bit because I thought it was going to be banned. I was like, well, I don't want to put any time into an app that's going to be banned.
Right.
But you kind of mentioned the grift. Trump gets $100 million from somebody that's got a heck of a lot of money tied up in TikTok, and all of a sudden TikTok's not going to be banned, which he was for it being banned before because it was a national security risk. So isn't that laughable, all this stuff? I mean, why do most people not see that and go, this is ridiculous?
Yes, I'm having a hard time laughing at it. I wish, I'm more, it feels more like just, like I'm in an insane asylum, watching people beat their heads against the wall or whatever. So it's just, I'm struck. It feels like this to me. It feels like Trump got his brand was The Apprentice and the reality show. I feel like we're just in a really fucked up reality show but it has real world consequences, and it's like being drunk, and then all of a sudden something happens and kind of you're still drunk, but you're you have to face the reality of what just happened, of something that wakes you up even in your state. We're gonna have to come to terms with that this reality show is gonna turn into a tragedy, and
those are sobering words.
Well, it already is one for many people, right? So, the extent, I don't want to be, you brought me on, I'm telling you how I feel about it. I wish I could find it to be funny, but I just see the stuff, particularly around immigration, and I find it just profoundly sad.
Well, I think that's, probably just the differences between you and me. It's I've always kind of dealt with stress and anxiety and tragedy and stuff. Just tried to find humor in everything. Humor is something that, heals me,
sure.
But at the same time, I'm right there with you. And, there's a thing going on right now, as an example, with the TikTok. You got these TikTok creators that are making money off enraging people, enraging the liberals, enraging even the independents by saying just batshit crazy stuff.
Right.
Just to get a reaction. You see people on there that are like, I'm white and I'm proud to be white and I love white privilege and, F you if you don't like that and go Trump. Turns out they might not actually be, they could be Democrats. They're just making money.
It's all grift, yeah.
It's all grift.
Did you watch the Nadeem Hassan when he sat down, and there's a forum on YouTube where he does, and it's not the only one, he's not the only one that did it, but he was brought in to debate 20 alt-right conservatives.
I saw clips on TikTok.
Yeah. So he's dealing with all of these guys who are, male loneliness epidemic meets, right-wing, websites and all this kind of stuff. But he's dealing with one guy who just comes out and says he's a fascist. And then you see the guy who gets fired 2 or 3 days later from his job because, this cosplay of oh, look at me, I'm a Nazi. Eventually it has real world consequences when you actually try to operate in the real world, at least for now.
Yeah, that's interesting. At least for now, there is a real world.
Right.
Wow. That's a big talking point, I feel like.
Yeah. It was a fascinating thing to watch. It was scary. Yeah, the online thing and the way in which it's designed to enrage us. This is the Steve Bannon, the flood the zone with shit. There's only so much information people can comprehend at once. And so when you have just a mass amount of surrogates for Trump, whether it be in the administration or in Congress or just guys in their basements online, like there's only so much that human beings can withstand of their propaganda and their spin and just their real world actions. And so it's extremely overwhelming.
All right. Well, we were talking a little bit about this before we kicked off the show, and I was asking you, like, have you ever tried to use AI to help you make sense of all this? Like when I was thinking about, getting my thoughts organized for this episode, it's like, where do you start? I heard this. It's these two ladies that have this funny podcast. Forgive me, I can't remember what it is, but she opened up this segment. She was talking about President McCankle Taco Tits. She was like, where do I get started covering this administration? She's like, there's so many fires, there's so many shit shows. It's like, where do you start? And I was like, there's so much. And I really feel like I was joking with Sloan a while back about, how you see on these criminal shows like Chicago PD, they'll have this big board, right? And they'll have their suspects on it, and then they'll have locations where crime scenes happen. They're just connecting all these dots. And I was like, we would have to have a giant whiteboard,
right,
with all the shit that's going on, connecting all the dots. So it's just amazing how ChatGPT
can synthesize all.
and just very bluntly says, it's a fucking mess. Did Trump know about Project 2025? Yes, he absolutely did. And you're like, right. Well, shit. So my question to I'm a libtard, he's an independent, but my question to the magatards is ChatGPT, is AI woke? If not, because one of my MAGA buddies is like addicted to ChatGPT, he's just not asking it political questions.
Right.
And he loves it, okay? Loves AI, loves ChatGPT. He's a big into research and does all that kind of stuff. I know it's like, what is that, an oxymoron, a MAGA doing research, but he's into some different stuff. Mainly he's a veteran and he kind of studies, what's going on militarily around the globe, but he never stops to ask it political questions. And when I told him that ChatGPT would give him some hard answers that he would have a hard time digesting, it's like, oh yeah, well, it's on politics, it's woke. So whatever. All right, now I'm going to outline this, and I want to get your responses to this, but I asked ChatGPT to outline what it thought I gave it 3 topics about how Trump is damaging the country and their democracy, the economy, and the environment. Okay, of course, there's probably more, but I picked those. I feel like maybe those are the biggest ones to me. And let's start with the threats to our country and democracy. So it gave me these 3 talking points: politicizing the executive branch, weaponizing the justice system, and purging oversight institutions. So are there any, out of those, which one of those alarms you the most?
Let's talk about the politicization of Jon Stewart weeks ago made kind of an aside comment.
Jon Stewart for president.
He's brilliant, and watching a debate with him and Trump would be...
Stewart Oliver 2028.
But he made some aside that kind of stuck with me, where he just said, you would have to give, if you were to just give out, say, FEMA money to everyone, you would have to give the impression that you're a president for everyone. And that's such a foreign concept that we have a gangster, a mobster in the White House who the only people, he will withhold federal funding for flood victims or natural disasters depending on their politics. Like it's the California thing being kind of primary or whatever. But the idea that there's no attempt to be a president for everyone. It is, and the extent to which the entire office is now strictly for him. That to me is, even if it was a matter of giving lip service to the idea that I'm such, there's just no attempt to even try to be a president for everyone. That's pretty different. From where we've been. and the way in which, I mean, there's also there's oftentimes like, okay, wow, well, look at all we got done in the last 6 months. I mean, our country's so hot right now. That's the
hottest
language,
country
the
in
hottest
the world.
country. I'm just like, but the
climate change. Is that what he's talking about?
But I think, my response to that, well, authoritarians, for all the negatives, they do get shit done. I mean, when you don't have to care about laws or people, or when it's just a bullying people around, yeah, you can accomplish things. And I want to be even-handed to say, the executive orders have built over the last 20 years. More and more presidents have used them because of just the stalemate in Congress, and Congress abdicating their responsibility. So he's not the first, but he's kicked it into high gear where it's just, sign a doc, and it's just this. We really are operating with an authority. We are giving ourselves over to an authoritarian.
Well, yeah, Rachel Maddow said the other day that I believe this was Rachel Maddow. She said we're no longer in a wait and see mode here.
We're here.
It's happening. We're seeing it, and I think it's different. Because what, like Jesse Waters would say if you jumped over to Fox News, he always says just the liberals, which is way more than just the liberals, because you're sitting here living proof of somebody who's very concerned as an independent of what's happening in the nation. But he would just say it's so much drama. It's so they're just so whiny and just, yeah, that it just enrages us. And then we want to go out and, punch somebody in a MAGA hat in the face, or at least I do. I don't want to put that on you. But isn't there going to come a time? I see all these people, political roundtables on Sunday morning, political roundtables every night on CNN, Republicans, Independents, Democrats, talking it out, really trying to talk over each other. But the pundits are going, listen, y'all need to calm down. Everything that is going good. Here's an example, okay? So we were told that they were going after the criminals first. I was watching a political roundtable last night. I'm just going to mention the channel just to enrage some of the magatards out there at CNN. And they were talking about how these ICE raids are not happening. They're happening in front of schools. They're happening on job sites at farms. They're happening. There was a big bust, or there's been big busts. There was one where they rounded people up in a Penske, or they hid in a Penske truck, and then they put all these people in a Penske truck. That was day laborers at a Home Depot.
Contributing to our economy, trying to feed their families.
Yeah, so the Republican arguments around the roundtable of this particular discussion last night were talking about, well, those are criminals. They're here illegally. But you hear Trump talking about how maybe we should relax on some of these farmers. But to me, it's just everybody should be laughing at this sumbitch and going,
you did this.
Yeah, this is a joke. It's such a joke.
But I think, we were talking about before, I want to derail I'll try to bring it back, but we were talking about before 20 years in the making of here. But really, this is, if you kind of look at the history of philosophy, this is 150 years in the making.
Yeah.
This is, what we're living in right now is sort of the fulfillment of postmodern thought. Before I was on here with Christian nationalism, I kind of gave, with Sloan, we talked about the nature of the Enlightenment, right? And the notion that all human beings, because a bunch of aristocrats and powdered wigs said this is true, then necessarily it was true. The powerful had arrived, could rationally, through empiricism or rationalism or whatever, arrive at truth. And I have issues with that, because I do think that there's a degree to which our perception of truth is culturally conditioned, we are shaped by our culture. Having said that, Friedrich Nietzsche comes in and kind of blows up the whole notion of truth. God is dead, will to power, and so all truth is culturally conditioned. And what we're living in right now, and again, the people who scared me the most about this, this mindset were conservative Christians. I grew up with just you hear this postmodern boogeyman of what if all truth is subjective and everybody has their own truth and how terrible that is. And the irony, of course, is the people who want this the most now that's why you can't have a conversation about ChatGPT. ChatGPT is woke on this subject because I don't really care about the actual truth. I want spoon-fed truth that confirms the narrative that I've already got up and running. So we are living in postmodern times where we can't even agree on what reality is.
Gosh, that's
and
good.
Now that we have social media and we have just this, constant, these just like plethora of voices all screaming at us and all these mediums, that just even getting a handle on what's actually true is so just unattainable. It's truly a frightening era. Years ago, I think it was like 2018, 2019, Ted Koppel sat down with an interview with Sean Hannity. You ever seen this before?
I don't know. I have to go back to YouTube and watch it.
It's really, really good because Koppel is he's like the wisdom of like a 70-year-old sage talking to Sean Hannity, who's like this bombastic, at that time he's like 50s or whatever, but just this smug, arrogant guy. And Koppel says, you have traded truth for ideology.
Yes, I have seen that clip. So powerful.
Hannity's response was something to the effect of, we got to give the American people more credit than that. And just like, no, you are actively manipulating the American people. But all that to say, that's the reality. Like, Trump is the embodiment of I'm going to craft reality that serves a particular ideology. Now, he himself doesn't have one, but he's partnered with people who do, and in doing so, it's hard to break through the kind of trance that he has over, because people don't want the truth; they just want their perspective affirmed, and so. That's what's disorienting for me, is how do we, when you talk about politicization of the presidency, the reason that's so frightening to me is because, there really is no such thing functionally in America right now as the truth. We just have, the perspective of what feels like a deranged con artist right now manipulating it.
Wow, that's powerful, yet also very frightening at the same time. So I just want to recap. I asked so everybody's paying attention. I asked ChatGPT to outline Trump's 3 biggest threats to our country and our democracy. Number 1 was the politicization of the executive branch, weaponizing the justice system. People were fired for being appointed to work on the January 6th commission. They didn't have a choice. They were said, here, this is your assignment. People in the FBI have been fired over January 6th. That's scary shit.
Maureen Comey fired. Why? Because she knows what's actually in the Epstein files, and she is therefore say her relationship with James Comey obviously is complicated as well.
Right.
But she knows too much, so we will rid ourselves of that so that they can give a sweetheart deal to Ghislaine Maxwell to exonerate Donald Trump and nail all the Democrats for the Epstein stuff. It's just so, back to your point, so blatant. But now we're back to that. Now we're to the weaponization piece of the justice. Donald Trump literally went and stood in front of we have this on video, stood in front of the Department of Justice and told them to go after his political enemies.
Yeah. But when asked, people said prior to the election, he's not going to do that. We don't think he's going to do that. So where are those people? Because I feel like there is a day of reckoning. I don't know what the consequences will be. They need to sting, I feel like. Some of these people need to be taught a very important lesson about the fact that rhetoric, manipulating the American people, as you said, that Sean Hannity and Jesse Waters and all these other, Laura Ingraham, they're all very, very guilty of. Like, there's going to come a time where will there come a time when they're held accountable? I certainly hope so. But
I don't know that it's going to happen. What you're seeing with the stealing of the election right now is they know that what they're doing is deeply unpopular. So they've got to steal seats. They've got to go gerrymander Texas and get 5 more congressional seats. They know that if the Democrats are given, any sort of advance, then that day of reckoning is coming. And so, what you're seeing right now is an attempt to we're gonna do a new census, make sure that we can, use Trump numbers. I love when he says drugs are going to be, 150% lower than they were. Like, fucking dumbass. And then he, I don't like the jobs numbers, so I'm going to fire this person. Like, we're trusting Trump with numbers. So, like, a census, we can trust that this administration census is not going to do anything other than just, like, pad their seats. So, derailing your point, but the day of reckoning is intentionally attempted to be delayed, and so whether there will ever be any sort of counter to what's happening right now. I mean, history is long, and
right.
Eventually Hitler fell. But I mean, here's the scary thing. I was reading the other day. He was talking about. I mean, Hitler, even after the bunker, had a 25% approval rating. I mean, he went a little too far, but, he loved our country and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, yes, there will be a reckoning, but the when and the how and the what,
I think there was a great guest on that roundtable last night. Something Turk. She has a podcast, something about Turks. I don't know. But anyway, she was talking about how if there is not significant reform, because she's saying like there was gerrymandering, both sides do it, doesn't make it right. What we're doing right now is we're in this tit for tat. I feel like it's like, oh yeah, well this, because you hear with the Epstein files. I heard somebody the other day read a comment on TikTok or watched a video going, careful what you ask for, liberals, because it looks like Clinton was deep in that shit. I'm like, I don't give a fuck. All these people need to be held accountable.
But note, they can't defend anything Trump does. Deflection is their only play. But it's these deflections of false equivalencies. Like, I don't see anybody running around with a Clinton flag or anything like that are just so subservient. Like, that's you. That's you who have embraced this cult-like devotion, okay? Did people love Obama? Yes. Did people sanitize some of the things that he did and said along the way? Or, sanitize is probably not a good word, but did people apologize for or explain away or justify things that happened along the way? Did they put his face on T-shirts? Sure. But it is a false equivalency to try to say this is the same thing as what's happening with the current devotion to Trump. So back to the point on like Clinton. I mean, yeah, Clinton's I don't know anybody who's like, oh, we got to hold off, got to protect Clinton. Fuck it. Take him,
all of them. Bill Gates,
do it all. But there is no ability to defend what Trump does. It's just let's draw cover. Let's create false equivalency. I mean, what Mark Wayne Mullum literally came out on the congressional floor and said, we are here to provide Trump cover. Like, use those words on releasing the Epstein files.
Yeah, that guy's a complete moron. I mean, you're talking about that he didn't even got caught with Jake Tapper. Did you see that, not knowing who was president?
Yeah.
During the original Epstein, or when he was killed or whatever. So, all right, let's take a break.
Sorry.
And then we'll come back. We still got a lot to get through. All right, so we're talking about, I guess we're talking about a 200-day Trump administration 2.0 kind of recap. We're scrutinizing it. But I asked ChatGPT, I feel like the biggest threats are to our democracy, number one. I put that number one. I'm sure some people put economy at number one, but economy for me is number two. And the environment, sadly, which should probably be number one after all. But again, here comes the comedic aspect of this. But ChatGPT said, all right, well, if you're concerned about Trump's biggest threats to our democracy, here are the three things: the politicizing of the executive branch, the weaponizing of the justice system, and the purging of our oversight institutions. And I said, well, what about the economy? Are there any harmful impacts? Is he creating instability in the market? And Chat said, here's the three things, because I asked for three specific examples. Chat said tariff-fueled consumer pain is number one. Number two, market chaos and retirement risk is number two. And number three, misleading and manipulating economic data. That's a very top of mind talking point right there. So maybe we should, lead with that. We all know that this tariff fueled trade war is a disaster. I mean, he's changed the policy well over 50 times. It's back and forth. It's tit for tat. A CEO, I read this the other day, a CEO brought him a gold bar that he was getting his ass kicked because of these tariffs. Brought him a gold bar seeking relief. Apple, $1 million donation to Trump inauguration fund is getting some special treatment on the tariffs. So in terms of, there's just another example of grift. But what were your thoughts when you read about him firing the commissioner for the Bureau of Labor Statistics? What went through your mind?
Chernobyl. Have you seen HBO's Chernobyl?
I attempted to watch it and I just had a hard time getting through it.
Yeah, I mean it's extremely well done. I mean it's not a fun watch.
No,
but I mean
it's very hard.
What you saw was just the manipulation of data by people who don't know what the fuck they're doing, and it's just a clown car. So yes, I mean he literally yesterday was holding up signs. We got new numbers. I mean, he's such a fucking dumbass. But we got new numbers. Well, I wonder what they're going to look like. Like the reality that we can't know, like we can't trust that there's any sort of objectivity coming out of this administration in terms of being able to communicate. It's all propaganda. And if you tell the truth, you're going to be fired. The extent to which, and this is where I'm fascinated by, I mean, Trump has, friends who, like you said, I mean, these are Wall Street CEO. I mean, these are people who are extremely invested in their businesses doing well, and Trump has relationships with them. Now, I mean, there's bribery and corruption and all that kind of stuff going on there, but just the ability to know, to plan, whether it's the tariffs or whatever, the ability, we need data, hard data, to be able to plan. And the reality is, I mean, we can't trust any of the data that's coming out of this administration because it's all going to be fluff. It's all going to be spin. It's all going to be propaganda that will communicate that things are great when on boots on the ground it's not. And the extent to which this is so manufactured, I think we're in a new era as far as our ability to even trust basic information that we would normally kind of go, okay, good or bad, whatever it is, it is what it is. There is truth, there is reality, and now that's even being, manipulated. So, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's another step, right? It's another step towards, an autocracy, a more authoritarian America. I think what people think about when they think about authoritarianism, they look at North Korea, they look at China, and maybe China's, I don't know, they're both great examples, but the people are silenced, you can't speak out. I don't know that a China is what they're going for in a sense, because they're still holding on to this democracy. It's just like this different faction of democracy where, if you have enough money, you're still going to be afforded the same freedoms, right? If you make less than, let's just use the big beautiful bill. If you make less than $400,000 a year, you're probably gonna have to do whatever the fuck you're told. You're gonna exist to fuel, to fund, to empower, to do the logistical day-to-day stuff that keeps the rich in power or helps them get richer or maintain or increase their influence. So to me, it's just another step in that direction. So I don't know. Do you feel like I feel like this is where the partnership of Christian nationalism and MAGA, Republican Party, Project 2025, all of the above, whatever kind of synergize. They really feel like we need a legalistic society to keep us all in check, because otherwise it just goes off the freaking rails.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they. Well, it's law for thee, not for me. It's that 10 Commandments that we're going to pass legislation to put the 10 Commandments up everywhere, but meanwhile, we don't adhere to them, or even it's all just a show for the for the masses.
Yeah.
What's interesting, you talk back to the economics and the kind of Christian influence there. Sloan and I talked about this guy named Joel Webbin before. He's a alt-right pastor. I don't know, he just pontificates on YouTube and says crazy, racist, insane things. But he recently was critical of capitalism, which I did not have on my bingo card, because that sort of like libertarian cosplay of like free markets and the greatness of that is kind of part and parcel with the Christian fundamentalist movement. Like, we don't need to pay taxes, and then we're all free to do what we want any old time. And yet, this gets the incoherence of it all. Mm-hmm. They want to act as if there's, that we want free markets. Meanwhile, they're trusting Donald Trump, who talks more like a socialist than anybody we've ever had in office, as he tweets about pulling the levers of various, businesses or whatever, and really wants kind of a centralized economy. So I think Russia, you talking about China or North Korea, I think Russia is more the template for Trump. You got the oligarchs, you have you have corruption, you have the bribery at the top, and then you have the masses who will essentially be silenced. But conservative Christians who believe in free markets, I mean, that doesn't really jive well with a controlled economy. So the incoherence of all of it is where I want to try to like explain, hey, Trump's kind of a socialist here, at least in terms of how he talks. And people can't hear it. They don't want to hear it because it just sounds like white noise that they can't process. But from an economic standpoint, when people are just printing money, or people are just, cooking the books, eventually that's going to pose a problem. Yeah. Like, you can only cook the books so long and deny reality so long before it eventually gets exposed. But the cynical side of me goes, well, I mean, tanking the economy is really, Trump said it the other day, like, a low dollar, you make a lot of money with a low dollar. Like, tanking the economy, that's what he did with casinos, right? Tank it, bankrupt it, and then everybody up, buy it up for 20 cents on the dollar. So I don't know the reality of, I'll just say this, the reality of just cooking the books, eventually you're going to have to pay the piper. Well,
and I think, the way, I think we bring this home, right? In terms of the economy, I think when you take all three of these in conjunction with one another, a terror-fueled just disaster where it comes to, being able to set expectations and consistency and all that stuff, being able to plan ahead, market chaos, the stock market's up, down, and of course, there's a lot of evidence of them using that to, do some insider trading. Number three, misleading and manipulating economic data. The lack of trust, is incredibly damaging. But I think what the culmination of these things is a tanked economy, as you mentioned, so that the world goes on sale and they buy it up. So, you said in the first segment, I can't remember the exact words you used, but you've accepted the fact, or you're cognizant of the fact that this doesn't have a happy ending, something to that effect. That we're headed towards some very dark days. And I think when we bring that tanking of the economy to the surface as a very legitimate, if not certain goal of theirs, like these dark days ahead, it doesn't it doesn't, appear to be liberal dramatic bluster, trying to over dramatize the situation so that we can, have a better foothold in 2026 with the midterms. It becomes a very sobering reality of what's to come, and it's frightening.
It is, and I mean, I my general MO is to sort of come to terms with the worst case scenario. And if I can come just operating, which is not necessarily a healthy way to do, but it's served me well. If I can come to terms with the worst case scenario, then it's not that bad, and I can sort of live out of all the things that don't happen. But yeah, I mean, what can I look at right now and go, oh, the courts will hold, oh, Congress will intervene, or the Republicans will eventually see the light, or the Christian church will stop their subservience to this man. Like, we're for all those. So just from a practical standpoint, what is going to restrain this man and the people who will continue to fluff him? And I just don't have a lot of, the courts will continue to push back. They will continue to do whatever they want because the courts can only they can't really enforce anything. So I think, my sense is things have got to get bad, so much so that it's just inescapable for people to connect the dots that we have given ourselves over to somebody who is betraying our trust and using us and our gullibility or, whatever to take advantage of us, to take advantage of our country. And we, the question has always been, will these people realize it before he has so much power we can't stop it?
The plan, I think, was never for Trump to be a king. The plan was for MAGA to never lose power, or for the Republicans never to lose power. So when he said, you'd never have to vote again, like Christians, just help me get in office, you'll never have to vote again. It means you'll never have to rock the vote so Republicans win. Vote me in, and what we're going to be voting on is whether J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio is going to be president. I'll give you that choice. You can go out and vote for those people, but there's not going to be a Democrat we're voting for. Or if there is one in the short term, like you said, we're going to do all this gerrymandering so they don't have a prayer of winning. And it's a slow, I say it's a slow play, but it's he just didn't come out day one, go bam, 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 and start snatching a woman's right to vote. But that's definitely the plan.
Oh, yeah.
So I was listening to, what's the guy's name? Drew Wilson?
Doug Wilson.
Doug Wilson.
Yeah.
Okay, so Doug Wilson said, well, the plan is, he absolutely said that, or if it was two of his surrogates said that they would totally support repealing the amendment that takes away the woman's right to vote. They don't want to necessarily take away a woman's right to vote. The way they were describing is that it was one vote for a family. The husband is the one who actually casts the vote,
right,
but he gets the input from all the family members, females included.
Yeah.
So my point to people, because to me, this is an easy way to put somebody who is right-leaning kind of on the back of their heels, is to say, well, are you comfortable losing your right to vote? Because if you're not married, you don't have a vote. So, because they're saying, oh, I love this, I support this, closing the border and all this stuff. There is things they can point to. They point to, somebody, I wish Biden would have been more like Trump with these hostages in Israel. These families are so gracious to Trump for what he did. They feel like their family members never would have escaped captivity if it wasn't for him. And I don't know, there's probably some truth to that.
I've got Israeli investors that I work with, and got in a screaming match with one of them at one point. I was like, but, there is an appreciation of his, he has endeared himself to those who are, big fans of Netanyahu and all that kind of stuff. So I think that the Democrats, I did read Tapper's book on Biden. It's damning. That was a cover-up. It's just fucking terrible. And I think so often, and these are big broad strokes and you can poke holes in it all day, but I do think Democrats typically run more on principle, and Republicans are more pragmatic. So, but those principles can hamstring Democrats.
Yeah.
So much so that they shoot themselves in the foot. And I think they've done a lot of that over the last, I think, Biden, had he actually run one term, and not set the party up the way they did, would have been, I think much of what we're living in right now is a reaction to Biden and his failures.
And created by, right? He was the catalyst for, because when I say, listen, I put Trump people on their heels with the 14th Amendment issue, a lot of times they will fire back with the Biden cover-up and expect me not to agree. And I 100% agree. The fact of the matter is that the country was better off with somebody with dementia at the helm. Because he had so many adults in the room around him, right? But I totally agree. So here's what we're dealing with here is that, if
we have two elderly, we have an elderly guy who may or may not always have had a good sense of what was going on. And now we have an angry elderly guy screaming at the wind and saying just insane things. It's a different version of the same thing.
Yeah. There was definitely a cover up, but when we talk about him not fulfilling his campaign promise of being a one-term president, there was a lot of things at play, especially the fact that this guy's losing his freaking mind. And so when that happens, if you've never had somebody in your family who has reached that point in their life where they're making irrational decisions.
You're going to take the car keys.
Yeah, and they didn't take the car keys. They didn't take, in fact, they fought for him to keep the car keys, and here's where we're at. All right, so let's move on to the environment. It's one of those things which I feel like should not be politicized or can't be politicized because the truth is just so apparent. We're seeing just this year alone, the weather has been insane. They want the EPA to roll back all CO2 regulations, get rid of all mandates and things of this nature. And I say this all the time with Sloan. It's doesn't matter if we're Republican, Democrat, MAGA, if we're woke, if the air we breathe is going to kill us all. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. But they're operating, correct me if I'm wrong, from the Christian playbook, which, tells them that they have dominion over the earth, to basically, strip the earth. It's yours to do whatever you want with it.
And I think that, I could speak to this maybe from a theological standpoint, that is such a misreading of what Genesis, has to say, because creation care and the beauty of it, that's also...
Yeah,
there's dominion, there's stewardship where you care for things, and dominion is the word dominate, I'm going to take it over. And that is such I think just highlighting the difference between those two emphases in how one thinks about not only creation, but your family. These people who want to only have one vote per family, it's, do I care for my family or do I dominate my family? And this gets into the masculinity, the Christian masculinity thing. Those are such contrary views of how to actually function. Do I dominate or do I care for? And it plays out in creation, but it also plays out in just so many practical elements of life. Because when you think about it in terms of domination, then that allows you to justify doing anything and everything, often things that Jesus would tell you not to do, steal elections or trust a rapist to run your country or anything and everything, because domination is the goal and the ends always justify the means.
Well, I think if we're talking about it biblically, is it fair to say that the domination kind of represents more of an evil kind of approach, and then you've got the care approach was more of a faithful, more of a loving God approach, and this is maybe because I feel like our human nature, when we talk about free will, our human nature is to dominate.
Right.
If I came into this office We're in KW Homewood, which I feel like is one of the most beautiful real estate offices I've ever seen. If I signed up as an agent here tomorrow, I'm gonna want to get my name on that leaderboard. I'm gonna want to dominate this place. I want everybody to go, oh, he's the man, right? That's just our nature. We can't be trusted. That's why I feel like we do need a bigger government. You know, I don't want to spark a debate on that, but.
Well, I think that those who will, it's interesting, those who will claim some notion of Christianity's influence on our country, and I mean, you can hear my kind of nuanced approach on that. I do not believe we're a Christian nation, but I do think there was sort of the recognition that too much power in the hands of one person, you know, if people are in fact sinful, broken, selfish, whatever you want to call it, that giving that over to one individual, whoever that person might be, is just a dangerous recipe. So we're going to have checks and balances. We're going to have equal, co-branches of government, that kind of thing. But it's fascinating how we just completely thrown that out the window to hand ourselves over to someone who's blatantly, manipulative or whatever. But yeah, I think there's the argument that you can be made that the reason we have representative democracy is to check, human nature to potentially dominate and to rein that in. But we've sort of lost that whole notion of restraint. But I think, back to domination, I think there's a good side of that. I want to, I'm in favor of industry and creation and crafting. Building houses and doing things like that's, even when you talk about care, care is not simply nurturing, but it's also protecting. There is a good side. You want to come in here and be a rock solid real estate agent? I'm sure, that's a win. There's a version of that that's a win for everybody, and there's a version of that where you lie, cheat, and steal and take advantage. And I think, trying to assess the extent to which there's a good side and a bad side of most things is good self-awareness and that kind of thing. But that self-awareness doesn't seem to be the notion right now particularly amongst a certain version of conservative Christians. It's take advantage. It's, anyway.
In the Doug Wilson interview I saw, he was painting that warm and fuzzy kind of picture of this Christian national family structure. I don't know how to really phrase this, but, and that is all well and good if the head of the household is truly somebody that approaches it from a care perspective as opposed to a domination perspective. And I think what they would find is that most would abuse that power. And he was like, it's all rosy, like it's going to be this little democracy, but the husband is the head of the family and he's just like the spokesman for the family.
And that's very much theological underpinnings of a particular type of theology. Covenant theology, federal theology is another term for it, or where you've got, this goes back to Adam and Jesus and who is our representative, and that mindset is, they're basically taking a theological concept and applying it in terms of elections. But at the end of the day, it's using a particular mindset to accomplish their objectives. And their objective is to relegate anybody that they don't disagree with and silence them.
Yeah.
So I'm not, like, if the opposite of that served their purposes, they would be advocating for that.
Yeah. I think what we've identified here, and I hope I don't lose my train of thought here, through these three things, because we've got democracy, economy, environment. These are my three big rocks I want to discuss today. And then under each one of those, we had three talking points, which I'm going to get to the environment in just a second. But I think, because we'll just go back to democracy. The three things were politicization, weaponizing, purging. But at the end of the day, I think the most damaging thing we have identified is an erosion of trust. And I just take it back to a business philosophy or perspective where trust equals capacity. The more people that trust you and I, the more real estate transactions we're going to close. But because we know if we go back to, or if we fast forward here, go through to the environment, we all know that Trump withdrew from the Paris Agreement on day one. I think it's pretty clear, pretty factual, a lot of hard evidence that the EPA, deregulation, elimination, they just want to totally do away with anything pertaining to a climate crisis, but the most damaging is the distorting of the climate assessments. Like, the most damaging is getting rid of or silencing the people that are reporting the hard, true numbers. You know, it's all these things. But listen to this. I want to get your thoughts on this. Energy Secretary Chris Wright has moved to rewrite the National Climate Assessment, prompting comparisons to Stalin-style control over science. Thoughts?
I mean, you're seeing it with science, you're seeing it with economic numbers, you're seeing it with the arts. There's just the attempt to infuse, you know, a particular ideology, so much so, and some of it's ideological and some of it's just self-preservation, to conform to a narrative that ultimately serves their purpose. And, you know, it's reactionary to the, you know, I think COVID was a watershed moment in the history of our country in a lot of ways. There's, you know, would that we have had somebody who could bring the country together as opposed to divide and politicize it the way we did. But the reality is there's so many perspectives on the nature of science that came out of COVID, and there's holes to be poked in, you know, the administration's response and then Biden's response.
There's still discussion about, I mean, Trump still gets asked this day if he plans on arresting or prosecuting Fauci.
Right.
Sorry to interrupt, but just want to.
No, yeah.
I mean, it's still very much, COVID is still very much a polarizing
Sure.
issue.
And I think, but I think that speaks to the nature of kind of just distrust of whether it's vaccines, but more broadly, like just science in general.
We're fucked without trust, I feel.
I think, I mean, social capital, to have a country that is going to allow for you know what we see in the Constitution, like, you know, without that, you know, social contract, social trust that we have together, then it just becomes all power. And we've been building towards this for so long, but Trump just accelerated it, where, back to what we said before, like, there's no attempt to try to be a president for everybody. It's just, I'm going to be this powerful person and I'm going to enrage you with various ideological points. Climate change is a hoax, you know, whatever is a hoax that I don't like. But the inability of us to trust, now we can't trust scientists, we can't trust economists, we'll trust Trump.
Yeah.
And it's baffling to me because this man clearly has no idea what he's talking about. He's clearly conning you, and yet he is there's just no way.
He's the leader of the free world.
Like, well, free, not so much. But,
yeah, exactly.
But I guess back to the question of trust. I mean, that there's no real way to have a functioning democracy without it.
I really feel like we've landed on something really powerful, because we're talking about how hard it is to stay on track, to stay with the talking points and follow an outline when you are having a political podcast discussion, because there is just so much to unpack and there's so many things happening so fast. But I think somehow we were able to sift through all the smoke and all the mirrors and land on probably the one word that will be the defining factor. Will that trust completely erode, or is there a way it can be restored? But I wanted to make a comment about the point you keep making about Trump not being a president for everybody. I think that was really brought to the surface based off of what's going on with these Gene ads with Beyonce and Sydney Sweeney. But, you know, Sydney Sweeney was a whore until they found out she was a registered Republican. And then it's like, she's sexy, she's hot, she's all this, you know. So it's like, if you are for Trump, if you are pro-Trump, if you are MAGA, you know, he is your president. If you are not, he is not. Or if you are rich, he is your president. If you are poor, he is not. These are the realities. Now, I wanted to close out by trying to talk about one bright spot that we can find in this first 200 days that has really made an impact on everyday Americans. And I don't know if you were able to come up with one, but ChatGPT sure did. And it said the one thing it could find was the regulatory rollbacks that delivered or will potentially deliver $2,100 in savings to the average American family of, let's say, 4 people. So the aggressive deregulation so far has saved Americans an estimated amount of $180 billion, which translates to that $2,100 per family. Chet says this may be the clearest and most measurable benefit for households, one you can acknowledge without also holding him accountable for broader harms. But I feel like, is $2,100 worth your
Clean air.
Yeah, clean air, the right to vote? Gosh, you give it a name, or just point in a direction, or it's really pin the tail on the donkey. It's like just you're gonna hit something that is gonna be like, yeah, I would rather be, I think, $2,100 poorer as a family to have an adult in the White House. I'd rather be $2,100 poorer than have at least. I really feel like climate change, and this is where I'm going in terms of my closing argument, is that I just feel like we're screwed on climate change. I mean, these other, like China doesn't give a shit about climate change.
Right.
Russia doesn't give a shit about climate change. MAGA's drill, baby, drill emissions. It's all, let's roll the coal. I mean, my daughter dated this country boy for a bit, and he had this big truck with these big pipes coming out the back, and he'd come down the road and it would look like a GD toxic waste cloud was following him. And I'm just like, we're so fucked. I mean, what's the point, right? And that's where I was thinking about this last night as I was scrolling. I've started this new TikTok channel where I'm cutting clips, just little bite-sized clips of like political discussions and content on the web, so that in the hopes that people consume it, and maybe it'll make an impact. I know it probably won't. But I was thinking to myself, I was laying in bed last night, I was like, this is what happens, because I'm already feeling some fatigue. Because when I took the month off, Pride Month off for Sloan to do her Pride Month special episodes, I kind of unplugged from things a little bit, and it was so nice. I mean, so I was laying in bed last night, and I was like, this is how people just fold. It's like people just give up, because I'm exhausted by all this.
Yeah.
But do you have a one bright spot that you kind of point to and go, Trump has helped everyday Americans in this way?
I want to play off what you just said a second ago.
Yeah,
but,
take us home, man.
Well, I think plugging to me is, I'm trying to, I feel like I have this weird juxtaposition of like, if I post something on social media, I'm like, here's my kids and we're having fun. And then I'm like, okay, here's a headline that's really, really fucked up. And I can't imagine, I would think that that's somewhat disorienting for other people, but it is a sense in which I am trying to live my life and unplug to the extent that I can. Obviously, I care very deeply about these issues. Obviously, I'm extremely concerned about these issues. I'm going to see Oasis in LA in about 3 weeks, and I'm thrilled to do that. And I'm going to try to enjoy. There has to be this unplugging. There's this great article by a sermon he actually preached in like 1939 in Europe, C.S. Lewis, called "Learning in Wartime." And the premise of it was basically like how, you're in the middle of World War II. Like, you've got the Nazis and they're coming, and the world is a shit show. Like, you would think that the only thing the responsible thing to do is just to obsess over this, obsess over the daily news, obsess over what's happening right now. And, he was preaching in a university setting, like, what is it? Like, why are we studying? Why are we doing anything? Shouldn't we just only be concerned about the war? And he sort of walks through why that's not sustainable and even desirable. And, that there is, if all we do is just kind of doomsday prophet and mope around, then we're missing, like, there is still goodness and there's still beauty, and this place is still worth fighting for, even as terrible people try to snuff it out and suffocate it. And I'm trying to operate in that a little bit, where I can go and see a concert and enjoy, hopefully Noel and Liam don't break up the band before we get there. And I'm gonna go, see LA. I've never been before. And that there's a sense in which it feels irresponsible or feels like, how can you celebrate while terrible things are happening? But there's also a sense in which, okay, there's still beauty and there's still goodness, and I'm going to try to celebrate that. And so as far as something I can celebrate with Trump, it all feels very, I don't see a lot of, I can say that, okay, I'm not an open borders guy. Like I believe in responsible immigration. Immigration, I think the environment's a very real concern for you. Immigration is the one for me that really, because we're talking about real people, lives. But I think we as a nation for the last 20, 30 years have mismanaged immigration. So just all of a sudden coming in some inhumane way of handling it is really problematic. I can say that I appreciate I don't like an open border. I think the fact that we have stopped that is a good thing. Now the fact that people are scared to death to come here and the climate, the culture that we've created, so much so that, people are afraid of our country, that we're not a welcoming place. That like the reason behind that is not something I would view as a positive, but the fact that people aren't coming over anymore, I could say is, I can take that with a grain of salt, but I see that as a good thing. So.
Well, and just to put a pin in it, I was very disheartened, disappointed not to see, I wanted to see President Biden's ass on the border right after the election, because I felt like that was just needed to get addressed, right?
Yeah.
And when it came to light, his solution to that was appointing Kamala Harris as border czar. I thought, Jesus Christ. And then to see her not go down there.
Right.
To see her, she was like, well, the problem isn't at the border. The problem's in Argentina, Venezuela, Mexico, Chile, wherever, Ecuador. These people are just coming. We got to figure out why they're coming. And I'm like, at the end of the day, it's really about the optics.
And that's where, Republicans just kill Democrats on the optics. They're so good at cultivating rage and fear and angst and grievance and all that kind of stuff. And the Democrats are so often incapable of providing an alternative. Yes, those are real concerns. And here's how we do that in a way that is in keeping with our values, as opposed to just, let's go full on fascist.
Yeah.
But when the fascists are the only ones screaming about or addressing, not the right, that's saying not what I'm trying to say, but when they're the ones pointing at a problem but also cultivating it, then the Democrats, if they can't rise to the occasion, these are the only guys talking about the issue.
And I bring this up just because, I have friends that want to say, oh, you're as bad as AOC. Well, AOC, believes in a clean air and does not support pedophiles and does not do all these things. Do I agree with her? No. But I want people to know that you can find common ground with me. As a quote unquote liberal, you can find a lot of common ground with me in terms of criticism of the left. When Kamala was moving forward as the Democratic nominee, or even before that, when it was looking like she was the one, I was like, oh, fuck no. She ain't going to get past this border czar bullshit. There's no way she'll win. But I wanted to point out the fact that she came so damn close with so little time, with so much baggage. To me, that's a red flag that should be, receive recognition. I'll also state that I don't know what Biden's mindset was around this, and frankly, I don't give a damn. But, I think what he wanted to do, or I think the positive spin that you could put on this, is he wanted the Republicans and the Democrats to put their big boy pants on and to come together to solve this issue in a bipartisan way, which they did, which Trump killed so that he could seize on the political capital of, closing the border upon getting reelected. So, I agree with you, and I think that is the most notable bright spot. The polls seem to feel that way, but I guess what I would leave people with is just to take a look at the bigger picture. Really get outside of the frame and really try to get a more of a 30,000 view of this, because we are, very uninformed as a society. But any parting words?
Yeah, we're on Raise Red, Living Blue, so I don't want to be too hard on, I don't want to come in here and bash the Democrats or whatever, because, I wanted to see Kamala win, even with the baggage, and that was the best option at that point to stop Trump.
It was the lesser of the two evils.
Yeah.
Right? So.
But I think that, I would love to see the Democrats, and I'll say this, and it's a good place to stop for me. I do think I've seen these Texas Democrats get the hell out and fight this gerrymandering. It feels like there's at least some signs of life.
Yeah.
There's some fight still there.
Texas Democrats, South Park, Stephen Colbert.
South Park, good gosh, man. You're talking about laughing. I mean, and the ability to kind of find some humor in it. I mean, they are guns blazing, and it is. I'm here for it. So.
And to me, that kind of goes into your category of where's the beauty and the hope, and still the joy in the world, and it's right there. It's with people like
Trey Parker and Matt Stone.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you're on here, because you are smart.
Well, Voltaire did it with satire can take down.
Wouldn't that be funny if Cartman is the savior?
He is the savior. Oh God, that would be wonderful.
Justin Jones. I'm very proud of this episode. I think we did a good job here.
Okay.
And you pushed for this episode. I mean, we would not be here if it wasn't for you following up with me, like fortunes in the follow-up, and I feel like we found some gold here. And I'm not talking about, Trump's gold toilet or whatever he's got up there, all the gold in the Oval Office. But thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to get this episode out to the masses. Thank you all for supporting this show. You can find us, just Google Race Red Living Blue, and you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, and all the things. Justin Jones, if you got some real estate you want to do in the greater Birmingham area, give him a call. Justin, how do they reach you?
I'm with KW Homewood, jjones.bham@kw.com. Give me a call or give me an email.
All right, so repeat it real quick.
jjones.bham@kw.com. Shoot me an email.
All right, y'all. We'll see you soon.
Politics of fear and hate are wrong. We love you and we support you.
But America